Chapter 2. One Little Problem. Scott tried not to panic. If Tiger lived on one of the farms in the valley or in the foothills beyond the logging mill at the north end of town, Miss Copeland would have made him wait for the bus. So Tiger had to live in Addison. And he rode his bike to school too. The minute school let out, Scott and his friends started looking for Tiger. Addison was a small town, and it should have been easy, but none of the kids they asked had seen Tiger or knew where he lived. They kept looking. Finally, Eric braked to a stop and put his hand on his stomach. It's almost dinner time. I'm going home. Kev glanced at his watch. It's after 5. I have to go too. But what about Dad's mitt? We'll try again later, said Rusty. If we don't find Tiger tonight, we're sure to find him tomorrow. See you at the treehouse after dinner. Scott turned down Conroy Street and rode home. He was late. Dad's pickup was parked in front of the garage. Scott dropped his bike at the edge of the drive and raced for the house. He found a note on the front steps. His name was printed. His name was printed on the outside in big block letters. Scott opened it and read, "If you want your mitt back, come to the crayfish hole on Mosswood Creek at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning." The note wasn't signed, but Scott knew it was from Tiger. He had to tell Rusty right away. He rushed into the front hall. "Scott, you're late," his mother called from the kitchen. "Go wash up. Dinner is ready." The delicious smells drifting from the kitchen made his mouth water. He stuffed the note in his pocket and dashed upstairs. When he came down, Mom and Dad and his younger brother Raymond were already at the table. Scott slid into his chair and bowed his head while Dad asked the blessing. "Where have you been?" Dad asked, passing Scott the potatoes. "With the guys. We were making plans for tomorrow." It wasn't exactly a lie. "Whatever plans you've made will have to wait," Mom said. "The florist shop is swamped with orders. Mrs. Miller has asked me to stay on for the rest of the week and help out. I want you to stay here at home with Raymond." But, Mom," Scott sputtered, "why can't he stay with Mrs. Gordon the way he does now?" "Mrs. Gordon is going on vacation tomorrow. You have the whole summer, Scott. It won't hurt you to stay home for a few days." Scott scowled across the table at Raymond, whose dark hair matched Mom's. It wasn't fair. Raymond was 9 years old and big enough to take care of himself. But just because he'd been sick a lot when he was little, Mom didn't think so. "Where were you planning to go, Scott?" Dad was a big man who drove road graders and bulldozers for Boyd's construction company. "Mosswood Creek," Scott mumbled. Not that it mattered now. "Well," Dad laid a big, muscled hand on Scott's shoulder. "There's no reason you can't take Raymond along." Scott's mouth fell open. He could think of a lot of reasons. Peter. Mom looked at Dad with a glint in her eye. "Raymond isn't ready for that sort of thing." She always worried about Raymond getting too tired, too hot, too cold, or too excited. "Now, Kate," Dad said in a patient voice, "the doctor has been telling us for a long time that Raymond is just fine. That fresh air and exercise will do him good. And Scott will be there to keep an eye on him. Won't you, Scott?" When Dad put it that way, what could he say? "Sure, Dad. Ask Raymond what he wants to do," Mom said through tight lips. Dad grinned at Raymond. "How about it, sport?" Scott stopped chewing and leaned forward. How would he get Dad's mitts back if Raymond said no? I'd like to go with Scott. Raymond pushed his glasses back up on his nose and smiled. I want to hike and ride my bicycle outside the backyard. I'm going to Mosswood Creek, and it sounds like fun. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Raymond, are you sure? I'll hire a sitter. The Martin girl or Albert's mother. Raymond shook his head. Albert is going to spend the summer with his grandmother, and I don't want a sitter. I want to go with Scott. Raymond said yes. Scott couldn't believe it. When the meal was over, Scott jumped up and helped clear the table. Then he hurried into the living room. Dad, may I go over to Rusty's? I want to tell the guys Raymond is coming with us tomorrow. Dad lowered the newspaper. Be home before dark, and this time don't be late. I won't. Scott rushed out the door and hopped on his bike. His mind raced as he rode the 2 blocks to Rusty's at the edge of town. Should he tell the guys about the note first or about Raymond? Scott parked his bike inside the fence and cut across the front lawn, worn patchy by too many feet, and headed for the treehouse near the back fence. He got as far as the makeshift ball field. Now that dinner was over, the never-ending ball game was starting up again. With 6 kids in the O'Hara family, there were always lots of friends around who wanted to play. Scott waited impatiently while Bernadine pitched easy balls to a little beginner. The kid finally hit one that dribbled down the third baseline. When he made it to first, Scott yelled, "Time out!" and trotted across the infield. We've been waiting for you, Rusty called, dropping the knotted rope down to Scott. What took you so long? Scott shinnied up the rope and into the treehouse. Eric scrunched back into the corner and Kev folded up his legs Indian style to make room. Scott settled himself on the floor between Rusty and Eric. I got a note from Tiger. He says to come to Mosswood Creek tomorrow if I want the mitt back. He spread the note out for them to see. That's no big deal, said Rusty. We're going there anyway. Scott decided to give them the bad news and get it over with. There's one little problem. I have to take Raymond along. Raymond? Your little brother? Kev grabbed himself around the throat, let his tongue hang out, and fell over against Eric. Eric tried to get him in a hammerlock. Stop fooling around, you guys. This is serious. Scott gave Eric a shove. Kev and Eric sat up, grinning and panting. Scott explained about Mom and the florist shop. I have to take Raymond with me or stay home with him, and I can't do that. I have to get Dad's mitt back before he finds out it's gone. So we take Raymond along, and once we get the mitt back, we go after old Oscar. Rusty grinned. With the money we get from Alan, I'll have my half of the money for a new bike. Dad said he'd pay the other half as soon as I saved my share. Let's decide what to take with us. Lunch! Eric yelled. It was almost dusk when Scott started home. He didn't want to think about meeting Tiger, and he wished he'd never borrowed Dad's mitt. He wished tomorrow was all over with and Dad's mitt was safe on the shelf again. But it wasn't. He had the feeling it was going to be a long, long night.